Good morning. So, joining me this morning is Faye Arbo of Warrior Women's of Faith and Jim Harrison of Natural Family Strong. Welcome and thank you for joining us this morning. As I'm chatting, I'm kind of getting us up and running on the website.
Hey, David, I'm just going to correct you. My last name is Arbaugh.
Arbaugh. Faye Arbaugh.
Arbaugh.
Arbaugh. Okay.
I are Jim, you are Ball.
And tomorrow you'll be Arbo again because I'll forget.
That's okay.
Faye Arbaugh.
Arbaugh.
Yeah. Faye Arbaugh from Warrior Women of Faith. .org.
I've been called a lot worse, believe me.
Me too. Definitely me too. All right. So the question I kind of pose is transgenderism is deadly. Gender dysphoria proving deadly 2000s. And that's not I didn't come up with that title. It's actually from an article that we are going to read. So we got a few things to show this morning, a few articles, one small video. There will be no show tomorrow morning. However, there will be something in the afternoon sometime tomorrow morning because I'll be driving down to Portland, which is about 3 hours from where I live, to Portland, Maine, to hand out 100 plus bag lunches. And so hopefully sometime in the afternoon, I will go live. All right, I think that is all. And everything that was scheduled for this month, the month of April, has been canceled. A few of the late April events are going to be postponed, Lord willing. But everything's been canceled for this month. So, when I got the final word that everything got canceled, I was really discouraged that night. And I was like, well, gosh, what am I going to do now? Right. And it was kind of not even, I keep saying kind of, it's not kind of anything. It was just real. Because I was discouraged and I was like, all right, well, what am I going to do now, Lord? Huh? What you going to do now, Lord? Huh? And it was just different because I kind of got confirmation that night that I now had more time to do what I've been trying to focus on doing locally, right? So I had more time to focus locally and also more time to look at some of the feast days and actually read a little bit more about them. And I was actually just trying to look for something. Here it is. When someone messaged me, when I let everybody know that there was everything was canceled for April, somebody messaged me, oh, I'm so sorry about that. And I was like, I was discouraged last night, but not this morning. Not the next morning when I woke up, I wasn't discouraged because I knew that it was time for me to get out and do what I'm supposed to be doing locally, and I talk about it all the time. And we pray for, the internet and television and all that. It can definitely be used amongst God's own for bad. Okay. Because we have all these people that reach out and say, oh, pray for Kenya, pray for Canada, pray for this this city, pray for this town. And that's all good, but that takes all of our focus off where we're supposed to be focusing. And as local communities, local bodies, if the local bodies focused more on their local communities, just imagine the power that we would have
Amen.
as a body, right?
Yes.
And I years ago, I remember when I pray for Japan, then there was a tsunami and an earthquake, and so everyone was so excited to be able to post that they're praying for the tsunami and Japan, right? And it kind of hit me like, why don't we get just as excited and want to announce we're praying for our local community, we're praying for our local body, we're praying that the local body be the local body and get out, and disciples make disciples. Pastors don't make disciples. Pastors are supposed to pastor their flock, shepherd their flock, right? So disciples make disciples. We're supposed to be out there in our local communities making disciples. Wherever we're placed, we're there for a purpose. Even if we don't want to be there, we're there. And I don't know. I just think that we spend so much time praying for other communities and for other things that we're not. See, there's a local, wherever a tragedy is, there's a local body there. Let that local body pray for that situation and those, because we all have our own situations and tragedies right where we live.
Yeah.
We think that one tragedy is worse than another. It's like when someone says, oh, well, isn't it terrible that all these people died, like 5 people died in this horrific accident? And I'm like, well, 5 people died all over the world, right?
There's a lot of people that die from drug overdoses across the river from where I live. I live just across the river from Huntington, West Virginia. And that's one of the biggest drug epidemics right now in this area. And people are dying so rapidly that EMS can't even keep up with it. And they have seen a little bit of progress over the last year or so, which is encouraging. But still, I agree with you 100%, David. I think that, we really need to focus on getting to know our neighbors. Who are your neighbors? I ask people this all the time. Who is your neighbor? Do you know your neighbors? Are you going out and talking to them? Are you taking them a meal? Are you, I know things are a little bit different right this moment. And, we have to be a little more cautious about certain things. But David, you talked about being discouraged. And I did a study on the word encourage a while back. And what that word actually means, it comes from the word core, which is the heart. That is the root of that word, core, C-O-R. So it comes from the heart. Now, when you put that word together, in core, you are putting something into the heart. When you encourage someone, you put something into their heart. So what happens when you are discouraged? you take away, or someone or something has taken away from your heart.
Mm,
So if you remember that,
That's
it
really
makes
good.
it easier, because then you can identify, okay, so who or what is taking away from my heart at this moment?
right.
What is it that is taking away? So then the other thing is that you mentioned, David, is at this time we're at right now, because I've heard other brothers and sisters that have talked about being discouraged or feeling let down because things have changed. You know, their plans have changed. They've kind of been derailed, and you know, God sets things in motion for us as His plan. You know, we try our best to follow His plan. We pray about it. We ask Him. So then there comes times where it shifts. So it may not be the same thing that we had originally planned, but that doesn't mean that anything has changed. It just means that God is saying, hold on a minute, we're taking a different direction. It doesn't mean that He's not with you. It doesn't mean that He has left you. It doesn't mean that you are a failure in any way. It just means that He's saying, hey, now we've got to take a different route. You know, we're still on the path, the straight and narrow path. It's still,
Right. And
still
we have
there.
to just, and so now we just have to refocus.
Right.
You know, it's like, I mean, I can't tell you how many times in the last year and a half I've said, I ain't doing no more conferences. Oh, I'm tired of conferences, right? But when they say, hey, David, would you like to speak at the conference? I'm like, well, yeah. You
I
know?
said the same thing.
And it's because it's like we want to be used, right? But we can be used if we put forth the effort to be used. If we use ourselves and utilize ourselves, we can put forth the effort and do things without having to travel halfway across the country constantly and driving. I mean, it's good. You know, I look at all the positives of driving across the country, right? I look at the positives of getting to stop at the rest stops and talk to people and give testimony everywhere, anywhere. And you know, especially if I'm in places where I know people don't agree, that's where I really want to give testimony, you know, but it's powerful, and I meet a lot of contacts that way. But now that I can't, I mean, I'm itching. I've got, my auntie used to say I had gypsy-itis because I always want to be on the move and on the go and on the road. And so right now I'm itching because we can't even leave the state right now. And so I'm itching. I'm like, oh, as soon as they open up them borders, I'm going somewhere. I don't know where, but I'm going somewhere, right? And I don't even have to, right? And so I've been going to Bangor, which is the closest city to me, and doing the bag lunches. And now, when I went down a few weeks ago to speak at a home gathering in Portland, I drove through Portland, Maine, and I was just like, oh my gosh, because I used to live in Portland, Maine many years ago. I was blown away by this. Oh my gosh, there were so many homeless, and they were just everywhere. It just looked like it was just way different than when I lived there. When I lived there, you might have saw 2 or 3, but now they were just everywhere, and I was just like, I was so shaken, um, you know. And so I was like, okay, well, guess what? Now you can go down to Portland and do the same thing you did in Bangor. And then last week when I did Passover, and I went to Andover, Maine, which is about 3 hours away from me, with a brother and sister there. And on the way back, I went to Lewiston because I like to get my oil changed by a Valvoline place, right? And Lewiston was the only Valvoline, so I went to Lewiston, and gosh, driving through Lewiston and then Auburn, I was just like, wow, look at all the homeless, and it's everywhere. And so I was like, I don't even have to leave Maine, right? I could stay in Maine and probably continue to do ministry like nothing I've ever done before, and some people try to downplay going out and feeding the homeless, and some people try to downplay prayer warriors who stay at home and pray, and some people try to downplay people who knit scarves and hats for people who are cold, and they try to downplay everything that they don't do, right? Because they're out doing, pounding the streets, but most of the time that's exactly all they're doing is pounding the streets and not really touching people, And so I don't downplay anything. I'm like, look, if your function is knitting scarves and knitting hats for people who are cold, then you better knit them the warmest, best hat and scarf they've ever had. If your function is to sit at home and be in your environment and be on your face and be interceding for people who are out there doing it, then you better be the best prayer warrior you could be, and so that's how I kind of look at it. And so with every different turn and every different focus, we just got to do it the best that we can do it, So anyway, tonight I'll be making over 100 bag lunches. So I'll be making some peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, and there'll be enough, Lord willing, to go around. And if there's not, may He multiply it. So, wow.
David, during this time period, there's a lot of talk about unemployment. If you're a Christian, you're gainfully employed right now. There are so many opportunities out there. And here's the kicker. We have the attention of the public like we've never had it before.
That's right. That's the truth right there. I'm going to tell you, that's confirmation, JR, that you said that. Okay, because I said yesterday, talking, yeah. I said, I was like, look, things are going to get rough, and they're going to get rougher. I'm just going to have to go out and get a job, and that's so hard for me to get a job because of my history. Like, I've already applied to every place within probably 50 miles of my home, and nobody will hire me because of my record. And that's, many of them have came out right and said that. I got hired by one company and went in for orientation, and then they gave me a letter at orientation of why they couldn't hire me, right? And so, and it was, I was talking, and the person looked at me and says, "But you already have a job." And I was like, "Oh, yeah." And so, and then somebody else emailed me this morning and said, "Don't be discouraged. You have full-time employment, and there's so much more for you to do." And then you just said that, and that's the truth, everybody. If you are a child of Yah, you've got a job, and you've got a
Gary and I say all the time, we're the busiest unemployed people that we know.
Yeah.
We don't stop.
And that's how we should all be, and especially those, of us that observe the Sabbath. We know we are to go 6 days a week, and then rest on the seventh, right? So that's our time of renewal and refreshment. So gender dysphoria, y'all. Like, oh, I thought you were going to get to that 20 minutes ago. Well, no, because we had other stuff to say, and we said it. So I want to read an article, and it's from last year. but then I want to kind of show a couple other things because, you know, there's a lot of people right now because everybody's home, right? More people are watching videos and watching YouTube, watching Facebook stuff and paying attention and researching. And we need to really, really, really research some of the stuff that we may not support it, but we don't oppose it either, because a lot of people are like, well, who am I to say what they can do if that's how they feel? Well, gender dysphoria proving deadly to thousands. The FDA has documented thousands of deaths linked to the puberty blocking drugs now increasingly given to children who suffer from gender dysphoria or claim to be transgender. Between 2013 and June of 2019, the FDA recorded over 41,000 adverse events. Okay, cases. Over 41,000 cases where there were adverse effects of this drug. This includes over 6,000. Now listen, okay, because this is puberty blocking drugs being given to children under the prepubescent age, right? Over 6,000 deaths. Over 6,000 deaths. See, you don't hear about this, do we? We don't hear the news. The media doesn't cover that. They don't tell you, hey, guess what, everybody? They don't tell you, guess what? Even though you want to put your child on these puberty blockers, guess what? Over 6,000 kids have died. How about over 25,645 serious reactions in patients who took the hormone blocker? Now, this one was just Lupron. It's the same drug given to children who say their gender identity is not consistent with their biological sex. Now, and then it goes on to tell you about the drug and what it can be used for. It's also used without formal FDA approval as a puberty blocker on the increasing number of children and adolescents who are being diagnosed in the US and the UK with gender dysphoria. And this is being done, of course, with the support of the American Academy of Pediatrics and the Endocrine Society. However, I want to take us now over to what an endocrinologist says about this whole issue, and it was focused on a book called I Am Jazz. I Am Jazz is by, I don't know the boy's real name, but he goes by Jazz Jennings, and so ever since he was a young little boy, his parents have been pimping him out to the media and to society and to the LGBT movement by allowing him to remain confused, believing that he's a little girl trapped in a little boy's body. And they have put him on puberty blockers. They put him on hormones at a young age. And so he came out with this book, I Am Jazz, talks about his journey in this darkness, in this deception. So the endocrinologist says I Am Jazz contains both false information and very troubling omissions. See, children who are experiencing gender dysphoria will likely be harmed by this book, as will children who do not even have the condition. Okay. Well, we don't want to know about the doctor. He's a medical doctor, an endocrinologist of a big place. Okay. So children with gender dysphoria deserve compassion and deserve to be treated with dignity and kindness, just like all other children. Because ultimately, what does dysphoria mean? It means confusion. Okay, so their unique condition makes integrating in the school a challenge, particularly when dealing with bathrooms and locker rooms. It would be advantageous for schools to have a comprehensive policy to address children with gender dysphoria. To some degree, children who share a class with a gender dysphoric child will need to be educated about what that means and how to address that situation. So really, ultimately in our world, okay, in as children of Yah, we know that you don't need to be sending your children off to the institution to be educated anyway, so they wouldn't have to be educated about what that means, right? Unfortunately, the book I Am Jazz actually works against educating children about gender dysphoria. In this essay, I used the book I Am Jazz and the TLC show of the same name to help illustrate medical facts about childhood gender dysphoria and about transgenderism. Because if we know the facts about the condition, we will be much more compassionate and understanding toward people with this condition. This will also help in dealing with the parents of children without gender dysphoria who have to explain to their children how to cope with this condition. And we know there's many ways to do that. So this book contains a number of factual inaccuracies and very significant omissions. Very concerned that children or even adults who read this book will be given false ideas about transgenderism. And this will lead to the harm of children, as has already happened, okay, at Rockland Academy, which was where a teacher read a book and read many books and then introduced a little boy dressed like a little girl to a bunch of children, and it caused a big to-do. So I just want to look at some of the inaccuracies and the facts and then go on to a pediatrician herself talking about how transgenderism has become child abuse. So inaccuracy number one, about a quarter of the way through the book, the author says, Jazz Jennings says, I have a girl brain and a boy body. Afterwards, the doctor spoke to my parents and I heard the word transgender for the very first time. The facts. The book is written in a way to make you believe that Jazz was diagnosed as transgender. Transgender is not a diagnosis. The medical diagnosis is gender dysphoria, a biological male feeling and believing himself to be a girl, and the distress that accompanies these feelings and beliefs is an example of gender confusion. So gender dysphoria, which is confusion, is never even mentioned in the book, okay? Jazz said, I have a girl brain and a boy body. This is called transgender. I was born this way. The born this way narrative contradicts known medical facts involving twin studies. Gender identity has been defined as the innate sense that one feels one is male or female or some combination of the two. Jazz Jennings says, I have a girl brain. As to Jazz having a girl brain, the DNA is wound up into specialized units called chromosomes. There are 46 chromosomes in every human cell. 2 of these are specialized chromosomes called sex chromosomes. Assuming normal development, females have 2 X chromosomes. Males have 1 X and 1 Y chromosome. These chromosomes are present in every cell in the body. They remain in the cells from conception unto death until death and do not change. And so no matter what surgery you have, no matter what kind of pills you have, you cannot change your DNA. It follows from this that Jazz is male. Every cell of his brain has an X and a Y chromosome, whereas a girl brain would have 2 X chromosomes. Therefore, Jazz, in fact, has a boy brain right down to the very level of DNA. See, these are things that we can't change, folks. The author of the book fails to mention that Jazz suffers from depression. Okay? The suicide rate of transgender individuals is alarmingly high. So why would we ever encourage or assist a child to go into a death style that would lead them to be even more depressed than they are now, and into a 90% of suicides are associated with a psychiatric condition? The risk of suicide coincides, of course, with the high prevalence of mental illness in this group of people. Gee, did he just say that it was a mental illness? Now, yeah, we know it as a sin, right? But I'd much rather see it be marked down as a mental illness than as a sexual orientation. The same thing goes for pedophilia. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, look it up. Jazz is currently being given hormone blockers to stop him from going through normal pubertal development. These powerful hormones arrest the normal development of boys into fully developed men and of girls into fully developed women. In other words, Jazz is now a teenager who has not been allowed to go through puberty. I'm going to take us over to a video by a I always do this wrong. All right.
Michelle Cotella is the president of the American College of Pediatricians. She just wrote a piece in which she says, we're quoting now, transgender ideology has infiltrated my field and produced large-scale child abuse. Cotella says doctors are encouraging parents to have their kids change genders when there's no evidence these changes are safe or even helpful. Dr. Cotella joins us now. Doctor, thanks a lot for weighing in on this. One of the reasons I wanted to talk to you is this is a field, I'm not sure what it is, of social science or medicine that is changing so fast that it's hard to sort of know where we are exactly. And you're in the practice of providing medicine to kids, so I wanted to get your perspective on it. What are you seeing?
Thank you very much, Tucker. I'm glad to be here. I think it's important to say that everyone on both sides of this issue is concerned about finding loving and healthful solutions for all children. Right. Yeah. Honestly, we at the American College of Pediatricians, and also I have many colleagues on the left, also insist that those solutions be rooted in reality. And transgender ideology is not. Sex is hardwired from before birth, and it cannot change. And that's why we've actually called this child abuse, because by feeding children and families these lies, children are having their normal psychological development interrupted. They're being put on the puberty blockers, which essentially castrates them chemically, followed by surgical mutilation later on. This is child abuse. It's not health care.
So as you know, you will be, if you haven't already, be accused of committing child abuse yourself and of being cruel and unloving and not caring for these kids, of imposing a medieval theology on modern children. How do you respond?
Right, but as you said at the beginning, this is about science. What is going on now with the puberty blockers, followed by cross-sex hormones, followed by surgeries, has absolutely no track record whatsoever. The loving solution for children who are children who are ages 3 to 10, they engage in magical thinking. They don't know the difference so easily between fantasy and reality. We need to nurture them through adolescence, through natural puberty. Our job as parents and physicians is to help children embrace their healthy bodies. And when this is done, once they get past puberty into late adolescence, as many as 95% will come to embrace their bodies and identify with their biological sex.
So I mean, since this is not just something we're debating as college students, but there are physicians involved who are prescribing drugs, what do we know about the effects of heavy-duty hormones, synthetic hormones given to little kids, like long-term?
Right. Well, we don't have long-term studies, which is a major problem, which is why physicians should not be telling parents that this is settled science and that it is safe. We do know that when puberty blockers are used appropriately in other settings, that we have observed in adults. For example, they can be used to treat prostate cancer and some gynecologic issues in women, that there's evidence that you can impact memory and cognitive ability in a negative way. And as far as the cross-sex hormones, if you have a young child on puberty blockers who goes directly to cross-sex or sex change hormones, they become sterile. You're sterilizing children. They can't possibly, little children cannot possibly understand the risk of having a medication and then never being able to have children in the future.
So I didn't know that. There's a lot I don't know about this. Again, this has all happened so fast. I don't think most people really know what's going on. But what's the youngest age at which kids are getting these kind of drugs?
The guidelines suggest that puberty blockers be given at ages 11 to 12, but I've had reports from colleagues across the country, and you can also find them in various news reports, that children as young as 9 have been put on these puberty blockers. And what it does, it arrests normal development. Puberty is not a disease. You know, you're stopping them. It's not just a matter of sex.
And I want to say that in the state of Maine, in Portland, Maine, as a matter of fact, where I'll be at tomorrow, there is the Barbara Bush Hospital has a children's transgender wing, and the age of consent is 8 years old to get on puberty blockers, and your parents don't need to consent to it. Come on in, JR.
Yeah, David, if and I've heard as young as 5, I don't know about the puberty blockers, maybe a child can make a decision when they're 5 years old what sex they're going to be.
Yeah, 5 years old with parental consent.
Right.
And which is why you have all these unparents out there that are actually putting their children on puberty blockers and hormones and then pimping them out to society, to television, to the media, to the LGBT movement, you know, and we see it more and more. I mean,
if a child can do that at 5 years old, shouldn't a child, and you kind of alluded to it earlier, shouldn't a child be able to decide when they can have sex?
Yeah.
Think about that.
Well, see, that's this whole thing where children can decide what gender they are goes to the next movement, right? That is coming, as in they'll be able to also decide on when they have sex, who they have sex with, and no matter their sex partner's age either.
Can you guys hear me?
We can.
Yeah.
Okay. My screen, it looks like my screen's frozen, but you know, what is the point in even having parents now? I mean, you know, they just give birth and then you're on your own,
cradle to grave.
You know, because I've read that even in the hospital now, that when you deliver a baby, that in some hospitals they are leaving the birth certificate open, not even choosing a gender and allowing that to
X.
yeah.
Yep.
So I'm just like, okay, what is the point in even having parents if, you know, a baby, you know, can just choose, you know, can a baby choose? Is a baby, you know, a newborn? Are they allowed to have the same rights? So there is no reason for children to even have any parental advisement now.
And that's the idea, is to get the family out of this. I'm sorry, it's, you know, I got to play the song at least once a day, but the family is critical. You've got the state, you've got the church, and you have the family. Who is in control of it? I was watching a special, like a 3-minute special newscast about a lady who had a special needs child. And she was just fraught because the government run public schools weren't open and they were taking care of her child. And I'm going, whoa, lady, it's your child. It's not the school.
Well, but that's it. That's why they want to send them to the public school, because they have a babysitter. That's why they want to give them video games, because they have a babysitter.
Yeah.
Because they don't want to be parents. And when they are involved in their children's lives, look at what they're doing to them.
Amen. Amen.
I mean, a lot of people don't realize just how dangerous it is, right? So I'm going to jump to the article about I Am Jazz again. Because omission number 4 is Jazz will need to have his child-sized penis surgically destroyed to create a false vagina. What type of surgical procedure or procedures is Jazz considering for the treatment of gender dysphoria? Typically, surgery turning a male into a trans female. Can't be just a female. Got to be a trans female, because you're not a real female. Involves dissecting the penis, turning the skin inside out, and placing it into a surgically created cavity to create a false vagina. After surgery, a dilator has to be placed in this artificial vagina to keep it from collapsing. Jazz has a problem. Now, this operation has already taken place with Jazz, and he had the problem. Jazz has a problem. Since he still has a small child-sized penis because of the puberty blockers, he does not have enough skin to line the false vagina. Potential remedies include sewing in a section of intestine along with the penis skin to make the false vagina. In one episode, Jazz is actually offered 2 different surgeries, one surgery to create the false vagina and a second surgery 2 months later to attempt to form the labia. The need for 2 dangerous surgeries instead of one is directly related to the effects of puberty blockers. Jazz currently suffers from sexual dysfunction and will likely have permanent damage. See, the effects of puberty blocking agents started in early adolescent development on long-term sexual function seem to be largely unstudied. However, from interviews with Jazz's surgeons, and one of his surgeons was a transgender himself, okay, was born a man and is transgendered into trying to be a woman, and is a medical doctor, right? Performing these kinds of surgeries because he believes in these kinds of surgeries, because he's just as lost and broken as Jazz is. Current guidelines recommend starting puberty blockers at Tanner stage 2. There's a whole Tanner chart. Jazz will very likely be rendered permanently infertile. Of course, that's what hormones and puberty blockers do to you. Now, I also want to say, so I also want to say that I did meet someone who had, I met a lot of someone who had the actual operation, but one was very damaged when he got raped.
Oh.
Yeah. See, his
Ooh.
vagina was only as deep as his penis was long, right? And he started on hormones when he was in his early teens. And so he wasn't very developed. And he was raped by somebody whose appendage was bigger than his vagina was long, deep. And when the person raped him, they completely destroyed his insides. And
Wow.
I mean, why are we setting people up for these types of tragedies, right? For these types of things, it's just it's crazy. Faye, I don't know if you are still there.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yeah, if you bounce out and click the link and come back in, you'll probably be all right.
While she's doing that, David, let's take that same rapist and let's just give him half of the surgical practices that Jazz or the individual had. There would be such an outcry of abusing this rapist.
Mm-hmm.
Wouldn't there be? I mean, there would be protest. You can't do that.
Yeah,
that's unnatural. You can't do that. Yet when we do it to a child, it's okay.
Yeah.
Sorry. This brings me back to my friend April. This makes me think of her because she, and I've talked to you a little bit about this, David, but she was 17 when her family took her to the doctor because she, quote, had gender dysphoria. And her gender dysphoria, I'm just going to tell you this, her gender dysphoria was that she was repeatedly sexually molested and abused by a family member from the time she was very young up until she was, a teenager. And she'd even told people and nobody helped her. So in her mind, she tried to justify, and she felt that becoming a boy would give her power, that if she became a boy, just like the boy that was molesting her, would give her this power. So that is her dysphoria. That is where her dysphoria came from. Not that she was born anyway. She was born with 2 X's, and there is no question about that. And she is a woman. She is a beautiful, vibrant woman. But she lived a large portion of her life as a transgender male, as a man. And, it saddens me because we don't know, what has happened in these children's lives up to this point. And I'm not going to put that out there that every child that is transgender or who has gender dysphoria has been sexually molested or abused.
But, we've said it before. And their bodies don't have to be, because their minds are right in the schools and right as society, and everything that they're being taught and told, everything that's focused towards the youth, which is going to take us. I'm gonna give a little hint to tomorrow's show, and it's perfect because this right here, what we just said, will take us into tomorrow's show, where I just discovered somebody sent me screenshots from some app that a lot of kids use, right? And they sent me the screenshots. One of the advertisements is a survey for teenage boys, and they're going to pay them for this to do the survey, and it really is to teach them all about sex and what they need to know about sex. And so they're again focusing on the boys, right? And the person that took these screenshots told me that they do have surveys out there for children for preteens, where they want to know if your child masturbates, if they look at porn, if they have had sex, if so, with who. And they give them choices. And some of the choices say child under this age, teenager from this age, adult over this age. They want to know if your 8-year-old has had sex with their uncle. They want to know if your 8-year-old little boy has had sex with their uncle. I mean, why would you ever implant that thought into a child's mind? Which is really the reason why these parents had better start getting more involved in, first of all, I mean, no, and it's a moral thing, I guess, but children don't need cell phones. Okay.
I agree.
They have them, then you better sure know what they're doing with them. And there's software you can put on in a group that I do with a couple guys. They use a software on their phones and computers that alerts me if they even do a search for something that relates to sexual or something like that, let alone if they go to any sites that are considered adult or of age or something like that. I get the alerts if they do, and then I can call them and see what's going on, why are you stumbling, stuff like that. So they do have stuff that we can do and stuff that we can use to our advantage. I mean, but what the ultimate solution is, don't give your kid a computer in their room. Don't give your kid a tablet, a laptop that they can do whatever they want with, and don't give your kid a cell phone. And if your kid needs a cell phone because of any kind of situation that you believe they need a cell phone, and granted, there may be some situations because we don't even have pay phones anymore, right? Okay, but give them a flip phone. Give them a dumb phone, not a smartphone. Give them a dumb phone. That's it. I mean, I can't even get into that. But tomorrow we're going to look at these screenshots of this survey. And it's actually just the first part of the survey, because they actually, like, you as a parent or as a concerned citizen, you're not going to be able to do the survey. You know why? Because they want, although the survey is supposed to be anonymous, they want these teenage boys to take a picture of and upload their ID card, even if it's their school ID card. And they say that's just so that we know it's a teenage boy. But I think it's more so they know where that teenage boy is that's giving them the answers they want.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that everybody had better be very aware of what these teenage boys are doing with their phones, and what all children are doing with their phones. And it's just so disturbing.
Yeah, and I always say, if you trust a teenager, then you got a problem.
That's right. Because, everyone says, "Oh, kid, they're just innocent."
And I don't care how good
innocent.
you think your child is
right.
or your grandchild, they're not that good. Trust me.
No, they're not. Because let me tell you, I know parents. Like, I have a good friend who called me a couple years ago and was like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe my baby is doing all this." And I mean, it was discovered that this little boy, preteen, was doing like videos of himself naked and him and one of his friends naked, making videos and getting money for the videos from people. Yeah. And so they never would have had any clue, any idea, had it not been discovered. I mean, and here, you had a boy who was 11 years old.
It's scary, and it's happening before teenagers, like you said, preteen.
Yeah.
It's happening sooner and sooner, ages 9, 10 years old, because, children are being bombarded with, so much garbage. And from the time that they're little babies, little children, their minds are bombarded. And, we stick them in front of a television and have them to watch as a babysitter. The television becomes a babysitter, and, they're even the cartoons and things that we put on for them a lot of times are so damaging. They're just as damaging because,
Yeah.
I have grandchildren that come over, and some of the things that I see that they want to watch are nothing but filled with witchcraft, divination, magic,
And it's all by design. It's all by design.
and so this is what is going into their brains, and their sexual innuendos. They're, even geared to small children. They're the sexual deviation is there, and I can see it plainly. So,
Yeah, especially
they may not even understand what they're watching at the moment, but they're being subjected to this, so that when that magic moment comes along, it's gonna snap right into place, and then boom, they're
because they don't call it programming for nothing.
Exactly.
And people don't get that. And
So,
I remember years ago. Gosh, this was before I even became a child of Yah. But so many years ago, it was probably 12, 13 years ago. It was oh gosh. Oh, so my nephew in bed went to sleep. He went to sleep watching the Cartoon Network, and I walk in to shut the TV off, and I hear it's a cartoon on the screen, but I hear, "Will slap my shiny blank and teach me how to masturbate." And I'm like, "What?" And that's when I found out that the Cartoon Network, geared towards children, at a certain time became what they called Adult Swim. So it became adult rated after a specific time. Really, Cartoon Network, and that was before I even had any other convictions, right? I mean, I was still living the way I was living, but I was like, he ain't gonna be watching that no more. I bet you that, and it was like, yeah, no, not here. Sorry. But that was the thing is people don't realize it. And when the TV becomes the babysitter, or, I mean, what happened to just putting your kid to bed and either having a nightlight or leaving the door cracked? But now they got to have a TV, and they have to have it on. And I mean, all this other stuff. This is just totally, totally, totally against everything that we should be.
well, they don't even have to watch a show, David. Even if the television is on, and you have something, you have a clean show on, we'll say that, the commercials that come on in between the clean shows are so disgusting and so horrible that, there used to be a show that Gary and I watched, and in between on the commercials, there were these demonic television commercials that would come on, and I'm just like, I can't even watch this because this is bothering me. Just the commercials that are coming
commercials. That's why
And
I gave up television.
Right. And then the children are laying there, they're asleep, but there's still information is still being processed in the mind, even when they're in a sleeping state. So, there's still that feed is still going in there. So, it's a hard thing.
You know, I have to say it. I could keep saying it. They don't call it programming for no reason. There's a reason they call it programming. And you know, I tell you, about 10 years ago, I still watch television until, gosh, I think it was about 2014, 2013 that I stopped watching television. But it was about 2 or 3, maybe 4 years into my walk. And I used to love to watch the Waltons, right? It was like, because my moral compass, when I started, the further my walk went, my moral compass changed. So there were some shows I just was totally convicted over, and was like, I'm not watching it. I can't watch it. I won't even, entertain the idea. But here I am watching the Waltons, right? And the commercial was for KY Intimate Jelly for couples to have sex, right? And I'm like, here I am on like, what was it, TBN or TBS, whatever it was that the Waltons were on, watching a wholesome show, and here I am faced with KY warming gel, and I'm like, what the heck is wrong with us? And and then it was a pastor actually of the very first church in this area that allowed me to come and speak and give testimony, and Pastor Bert of Ellsworth Assemblies of God, and he said to me, the focus, the clarity that you get when you stop watching television. And he didn't mean like a moral clarity. He meant actual clarity, like the fog that lifts from your mind, where you realize that you're able to focus better, that you have a little more clarity on things, that you're not so foggy on some things. That fog has been implanted and we don't even realize it. And every time we turn on that television, that fog just gets fed, right? And so when we stop watching it, we receive clarity, and that fog lifts and we can focus better. Wow. It's way past 9:30, but but we've been going for an hour with guest hosts anyway. So again, tomorrow we're going to look at this app, this online survey thing that's designed for your teenage boys to tell these people who are doing this survey and paying them to do this survey, that wants them to upload or take a picture of their school ID, but they're not going to use it in the survey because the survey is anonymous. They just want to make sure that they're who they say they are. So these people, these pedophiles, I almost want to say, that are conducting this survey, right? It's there's a university and a couple actual companies, organizations that are taking part, that are funding this, and we're going to look at that tomorrow. Not tomorrow. Well, yeah, no, not tomorrow, because there's no show tomorrow. We're going to look at that Wednesday. So no show tomorrow morning. We'll tune in sometime in the afternoon, do a little something live. And then tomorrow night for Dry Bones, there will be a Dry Bones. And our guest for tomorrow night on Dry Bones is going to be Holly Baglio, MK Ultra, Pedogate, Pizzagate. Powerful testimony. I want to thank JR, and I want to thank Faye Arball for joining me this morning. And so, for all of you who don't know, Faye Arball, warriorwomenoffaith.org. That's warriorwomenoffaith.org. And JR, or Jim Harrison, is naturalfamilystrong.com. Hey guys, I thank you. I appreciate you. I don't know what I'd do without you, all of you, even you. So thank you, Lord willing. I will see you sometime tomorrow afternoon, and Lord willing, Wednesday morning when we talk about this survey for your children. We'll have a couple guest hosts joining us. So I love you guys. I appreciate you. Thank you. And
Thank you. Have a great day.
thanks.